Hi guys, let's back in London in early 1932s. The year is 1932. As I disembark the train at Victoria Station, leaving behind the plush, albeit smoke-scented, carriage of the Southern Railway, the shock of the city air was immediate. It wasn't just cold, it was heavy, a tangible blend of coal dust, damp wool, and the faint, underlying ozone of the new electric underground system. London was less a single city and more a collection of tightly wound villages, each humming with its own distinct rhythm. My destination was a modest, yet respectable, boarding house in Bloomsbury, within walking distance of the British Museum. A black cab, one of the newer, rounder models, navigated the traffic with a driver whose knowledge of the labyrinthine streets was a performance art in itself. The traffic was a spectacle, the robust, reliable growl of the AEC-renowned buses vying for space with nimble, high-wheeled bicycles and delivery vans. The sound was a continuous, brassy din of klaxons and bells, punctuated by the occasional shout of a street vendor selling the morning papers. Bloomsbury itself offered a slightly quieter existence. The Georgian townhouses stood sentinel, their facades unified by a perpetual layer of London grime. It was a place of intellect and quiet refinement. I spent my first afternoon in the cavernous reading room of the British Museum, beneath the vast, circular dome. The silence was profound, broken only by the turning of a page or the quiet shifting of a trolley. Here, I felt the weight of history, a history that stretched from Roman Britannia to the furthest outposts of the empire, evidence of which was neatly catalogued in the surrounding halls. In the evenings, I ventured eastward toward the West End. Theatreland was experiencing a golden age. I saw a brilliant production at the Haymarket, the audience a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, a dazzling display of wealth that seemed momentarily untouched by the economic hardship gripping the rest of the nation. The foyers of the theaters were gilded and plush, the air thick with perfume and the smoke from expensive cigarettes. To see the lights of London at Piccadilly Circus was a revelation. Towering electric signs advertised Bovril and Gordon's gin, a vibrant, modern counterpoint to the city's ancient stone structures. A trip to London would be incomplete without witnessing the heart of its governance and history. Westminster was everything the postcards promised, yet so much more imposing in person. Big Ben's chimes resonated with an authority that felt permanent and unshakable. Nearby, I found myself drawn to the embankment, watching the P.S. Tattershall Castle ferry passengers across the murky, tidal Thames. The river was a working artery then, busy with barges, tugs, and steamboats, a view largely uninterrupted by the high rises that would one day define the skyline. The defining landmarks, Tower Bridge, the Tower of London, were less tourist attractions and more functional parts of the city's industrial machinery. One day was dedicated entirely to the East End. The contrast was stark. The grandiosity of Westminster gave way to narrow, crowded streets, tightly packed terraced housing, and the bustling chaos of markets like Petticoat Lane. Here, the pinch of the Depression was visible on every face. The resilience, however, was equally apparent. People haggled over prices with a cheerful toughness, street performers put on impromptu shows, and the smell of jellied eels mingled with the scent of spices from the burgeoning immigrant communities. It was a raw, vital part of the city that provided a necessary balance to the high society of the West End. My journey culminated in a quiet, reflective afternoon in Hyde Park, watching children sail model boats on the Serpentine. It was a moment of peace in a city that rarely stopped moving. London in 1932 was a fascinating duality. It was the capital of a proud, vast empire, yet a city recovering from a world war and bracing for economic uncertainty. It was a place where tradition and modernity clashed in a beautiful, soot-stained dance. Leaving London via Euston Station a week later, I felt I had seen a city at a crucial turning point, poised between the grand, heavy certainties of the Victorian past and the uncertain, fast-paced future of the modern world. The image that stayed with me was not the majesty of the palaces, but the indomitable spirit of its people, moving through their magnificent, grimy, extraordinary city.